What drives a person to do this? And why did large crowds gather to watch? Walk with me down the wild world of death rituals and watch how die-hard monks and nuns controlled the fate of the Japanese public by dying. I'm also going to rate each ritual on horribleness. Japanese monks did some extreme things in the past, like intense fasting, staying in seclusion for years, and being vegetarian, but killing themselves was a whole different level. These monks didn't just flirt with death, they took it to bed, then paid the $400. Now, Buddhism actually condemns suicide, but death rituals were still done by the most hardcore monks. How did they justify it? Well, there's a famous story about the Buddha. In one of his past lives, he was on a hike and saw a starving tiger and her cubs. Hunger made her see her cubs as cute little portions of juicy meat. Compassion filled the Buddha's heart and clouded his brain somewhat, and he jumped from a ledge to his death, allowing the tiger and cubs to eat their bellies full. The Buddha's intentions changed his act from a suicide to a sacrifice, and if sacrifice was okay for Buddha, it was okay for his followers. But then, what made the death rituals sacrifices and not suicides? Well, a monk who hit the backspace on his life didn't think this life was no longer worth living. He did it to help the common people escape this world of suffering, because apparently the common people thought this life was not worth living. Life was a conveyor belt of spoiled sushi, a continuous flow of shitty experiences. But these rituals allowed a monk to absorb the negative karma of his supporters, and when his body died, that karmic debt died with it. This boosted the chances of his supporters reincarnating into a better life, or maybe even into a Buddhist paradise. Ceremonies to abandon the body became a thing early in Japan's history, popular enough that the imperial court in the 700s had to pass a decree telling monks and nuns to kindly stop offing themselves. But it became a practice they couldn't wipe out. It kept reincarnating. There was a Chinese story about a monk-splaining to a crowd that reciting the name of the Buddha Amida allowed you to reincarnate in Amida's paradise, a place modestly called the Pure Land of Ultimate Bliss. Someone in the crowd was so inspired that he climbed a tree, repeated Amida's name, and jumped to his death. It's not clear whether he reached the Pure Land or just land. Some Japanese priests thought the story was quite moving and started moving themselves quickly off cliffs. Falling. Terrifying, especially as the ground comes at you. But if it's a high enough fall, you die immediately once you hit the ground, so there's less terror at the bottom. I give this ritual a 7 out of 10. The tradition continued with another deadly practice many people did. In one story, a holy man got sick, but stayed away from food and water for 5 to 10 days at a time, asking, "What good is food? It only keeps the body alive, a body that does evil deeds and is stuck in the cycle of life and death." He soon reached his weight loss goals and passed them and died. Starving. It's horrible. I've skipped dinner a few times, but it's a slow death that comes as the body gets weaker, and after a while the brain becomes more loopy than headphone wires, so you might feel more delirious than terrified. I give it a 4. Falling and starvation are great, but there were more extreme rituals. There was a story of one holy man who sailed out into Lake Biwa. He was the sort of man who followed all the Buddhist rules. Behind him were 50 to 60 boats of witnesses. He said to everyone, "After I drown, if I am reborn in the Pure Land, my body will not decay, but will reach the west shore. If not, my body will wash up on the east shore." Then he jumped and sank in a splash of enlightenment. Come sunrise, they found his body on the west shore, sitting in the lotus position with his hands together. Now you can't trust the whole story, it clearly had some exaggerations. A monk who followed all the Buddhist rules, that's crazy. But we do have a bunch of records of Buddhist drownings. They often happened on the 15th of the month, because that was Amida Buddha's day, a day when you were more likely to form a connection with Amida. It was usually a deeply personal act that a monk only did in front of a few of his closest crowds. It was totally public, and there was a really good reason for that. A monk normally announced it beforehand so people could reschedule their sinning and gather to watch. The people had a similar mindset to subscribers of financial YouTube channels. They believed that if they saw someone going to the Pure Land, they were more likely to go there themselves. They had a similar success rate. A Buddhist drowner had one huge responsibility. He had to go to the Pure Land after death, or it was all useless. That meant he had to keep calm and focused on the Buddha the whole time. It was like walking a tightrope while dodging your own negative thoughts. He couldn't scream, make a sound, or even stray his thoughts from the Buddha. It's cold, and this bitch was over. He was kicked off the ship to paradise and onto the rowboat to regular rebirth. The most popular drowning spot was the west gate of Shitenoji Temple. It faced the sea, and they said it had a connection to Amida's Pure Land. Drowners would row out a bit, pack rocks into their clothing, and go a little overboard. One guy sat in a bamboo cage that people lowered into the waters. If you were lucky, sometimes you saw multiple drownings. The public hit a karma jackpot when in one case, 11 mountain priests drowned together. Many serial killers avoided hell that day. When the famous priest Ippen died, many of his followers threw themselves into the ocean to follow their master to paradise. Drowning, obnoxiously horrific, reliving that feeling of accidentally snorting water over and over. A breathtaking experience. That's an 8 if I've ever seen one. Sometimes a monk might want to sacrifice his body, but didn't want to get his hair wet. Also, he might have second thoughts while drowning and ruin his chances of reaching the Pure Land. Luckily, the paths to paradise were many. This next one sounds better at first, but might have actually been worse. According to the Japanese, Amida's Pure Land is located to the west, but you can never reach it because between us and it lie a bajillion worlds. But Amida is not the only guy with the Pure Land. Other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas have their own paradises. Paradises are like rockets. If you have one, people take you seriously, and eventually, they'll settle in your holy land. There is another, much closer Pure Land that belongs to a Bodhisattva. A Bodhisattva is someone who could enter Nirvana and become a Buddha, but said screw it and stayed in this world to help others become enlightened instead. A bartender who sticks around after last call to make sure everyone gets home safely. One of the most popular Bodhisattvas is Kannon. She makes nice martinis. Her paradise is Fudaraku, a mythical mountain island somewhere in the south. Instead of going to Amida's Pure Land, a monk could try to sail to Mount Fudaraku. Thing is, no one knew exactly where it was, so often they didn't try to find it at all. They usually set sail near the Kumano Nachi shrine, and often didn't try to steer the boat at all. Instead, they left the navigation to the mercy of Kannon's compassion. Sadly, Kannon often thought that her Pure Land lay at the bottom of the ocean. People followed in their own boats for a short while to share in that spiritual goodness. One monk prayed to Kannon for 3 years, then made a 1,000-armed figure of her and positioned it like it was steering the boat. Another guy set sail on a boat with only 1 month of food and lamp oil and trapped himself in a cabin that was nailed shut. At first, sailing sounds much better than drowning, but when you're out there all alone, you get a lot of time to think. Buddha says the best way to find regret is to be alone with your thoughts. Buddha also says, I never said that. After a while, you might have some negative thoughts, and boom, no paradise for you. Or a storm might sink your boat, or you might decide to end things quick and drown anyways. There were at least 50 people that we know of who set sail for Fudaraku, sailing to death. A slower death by starving, but there's a chance you might still drown. And being alone in the ocean is scary by itself, so I'll give it a 5. This next death ritual is super brutal and is still sometimes done today. The idea came straight from the Lotus Sutra, a document that's always topping the Buddhist bestsellers list. There's a chapter about a bodhisattva called Medicine King. The chapter says that burning a finger or a toe for the Buddha was a greater sacrifice than giving away your wife and kids, even greater than giving away all the mountains and forests in the world. It was the ultimate gift. To demonstrate, the Medicine King rubbed oils on his body and lit up a match, and he became a match for 1,200 years. Early Chinese monks read this and said, that's crazy, let's do it, and started the practice of burning yourself for karma. The ancient Japanese next door smelled the smoke of burning Chinese and thought, I guess this is what civilized societies do, and started doing it too. Buddhist priests were no strangers to fire. In one case, a monk accidentally touched a woman with his index finger. Then he roasted the sinful finger like an evil marshmallow. Buddha says, to err is human, to incinerate divine. The first ever case of full body burning in Japan, supposedly, was that of a priest named Osho in the 900s. Every time he recited that one Medicine King chapter of the Lotus Sutra, he was overcome with a burning passion and wanted to make it literal. They said he decided to purify his body by eating pine needles and drinking rainwater. Osho sat on a pyre and symbolically offered different parts of his body to everyone, like he offered his organs to the people, his chest to one Buddha, and his throat to another. Osho was always known in the temple as a terrible gift giver. He then lit the pyre, and as the flames licked higher, he licked his lips and chanted. They said even after the flames died, his voice still chanted. His charred body had a pleasant smell, and the breeze made the sound of music. The fire went out, but the light remained, and shone through the mountains and valleys. There have been a bunch of records of self-burnings since the 900s. It seemed to be the go-to self-killing ritual for holy people, sometimes done on special occasions. Master, what will you be for Halloween? A candle. These body burners would choose a place associated with death, like cremation grounds. Unlike modern times where burnings are done as protests or to bring awareness to problems, these practices were done as sacrifices. Monks became torches that lit the way to enlightenment. Now, body burnings were fairly rare, like the other death rituals. I don't want you to think that temples were just full of burning nuns and firefighters. In most cases, monks who expressed interest in it were shot down by their peers and elders. Master, I wish to sacrifice my body in fire to guide others to enlightenment. Perhaps try fasting first. But they did happen once in a while, seen by hundreds of people each time. Burning. Now, drowning is agony, but it's over relatively quickly, and you feel more panic than pain. But with fire, you feel that heat and pain until you die, or until your nerves are burned. Absolutely not recommended. Gonna have to give it a 9. With everyone's fate riding on their deaths, you have to ask how voluntary these rituals were. There's one story about a priest who announced his drowning day, so a huge crowd gathered. Everyone pushed and shoved to get a glimpse of him. But once he hit the water, realization hit his face, and the priest was like, "I've made a terrible decision," and rushed back to shore. The crowd thought, "Oh no, he needs encouragement," and decided to help him on his journey to paradise. They threw rocks at him until his head burst, spilling holy brain matter into the waters. Now, this story is fictional, but I'd have to assume that at least some cases were involuntary. There was heavy pressure to go through with it, even if you had second thoughts. One other death ritual, the ultimate one, I think, was the unbelievable self-mummification ritual, where priests mummified themselves. There's a lot of talk on the internet about it, but the internet is wrong on so many aspects of this ritual. Click here to see why. We have some new patrons on Patreon today. Taijo, Lazy Artist, hey, me too. Christopher Fain, and Louise Rodriguez. Thank you so much. Alright, I love you and spread the knowledge.